Welcome to Beauty and the Gi, the podcast about jiu-jitsu and life on and off the mat. I'm Jen Eads, an eternal white belt full of curiosity and questions about all the things jiu-jitsu.
And I'm AJ Klingerman, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu brown belt, still obsessed with jiu-jitsu.
Oh, wait. Just say that again because it sounds so nice.
A Brazilian jiu-jitsu brown belt, still obsessed with jiu-jitsu.
I love it. And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anything that feels different now that you've got the brown belt?
You know, I really just haven't gotten to break it in enough yet. We were closed right after that. I got it the night before we closed for Christmas. And
oh, right.
So yeah, I really haven't gotten to train enough in it. I can't wait to start competing. So I'm really excited to get back to really doing it. And I'm still kind of rehabbing my back. So according to Coach Jess, I'm only allowed 3-minute rounds right now. And they all have to be with Rissa or James because they're my controls.
Good. I'm glad you've got the grown-ups that you're rolling with. Perfect. What are we talking about today?
So Mary Hart had posted on the Women in Jiu-Jitsu Facebook page, just kind of asking what do you do after a bad class? How do you handle it? And I just thought that'd be a really good subject for the podcast.
Hey friends, it's Jen in post-production editing, and I wanted to chime in just to let you know that before we did record this, AJ contacted Mary to make sure that she was okay with us using her name and sharing that her post was the inspiration for this episode. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Yeah, because I know we've talked at times about what happens on the mat and trying to, not go into the downward spiral.
One of my favorite episodes.
Oh, yeah. And probably one of our most downloaded ones, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Probably because we talk about it all the time, I'm guessing. Whereas start with this one.
Yeah.
So if you're new to the podcast, make sure you go into the back catalog. I think it's episode 7, The Downward Spiral. I will make sure to link to that in the show notes.
Great.
But what happens, you're in the car, you're on the way home, you get home and you have to be around family. Then what?
Yeah. Well, so let's just talk about personally, what would you do after a bad class?
Probably go home and be a cranky little troll. Not that that's ever happened.
Let's ask Beth.
Right. And then that would soon be followed by a come to Jesus with Beth of, is it jujitsu or is there something else? Because, it's because I don't know what things are like in your house, but in my house, the problem is never really the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just the last straw. Mm-hmm. So I think some of it is going back and digging a little deeper. Did you get into it with a client? Did something happen even before jiu-jitsu early in your day that now it's just magnified by a bad time on the mat?
I think that's a great point. I mean, even did you eat enough? Did you get enough sleep the night before? Have you drank enough water? Do you feel like trash on the mat because you haven't been taking care of yourself?
It's no good to roll when you're hangry.
No, yeah. I think those are all good points. Evaluating, kind of your life or your day as a whole and seeing if it was really what was happening on the mat or if that was just the product of everything else.
Mm-hmm. Because for me, so often when I'm on the mat, the jiu-jitsu is just everything else that's going on in my head, suddenly manifests in real life. And it might be getting choked. It might be getting smashed. Whatever that thing is that's in my head, that's pretty much what happens on the mat.
Yeah. And of course, that's what makes the downward spiral happen. You're yep, this is my life. I'm always just getting smashed. I feel like I'm the nail in every aspect.
So true.
If it's not that, if it really is just whatever happened that day, I think going kind of and analyzing what happened. Did you just not go into it with a game plan? So you didn't really have goals in mind. So it's hard to feel like you accomplished anything if you didn't have what you wanted to accomplish to begin with.
Oh, so true.
And then, even making sure who you're willing to roll with or who you're not willing to roll with and not letting people kind of dictate that for you. So like if I had a bad day and I look back and I go, oh, well, I only rolled with the, brand new white belt dudes, and that's probably why I had a bad day, because everybody was crazy, like maybe that was it. So I think, just analyzing the reason, like what happened, what went wrong on the mat.
I think something else that helps me too is because I keep a journal of what we worked on and what we covered in class. And I think writing that out, because it's one thing to replay it in your head. It's another thing, for me at least, to actually sit down and put it out on paper and then look at it and go, oh, yeah, that probably happened. And there were all of these contributing factors. It wasn't just one thing.
Yeah. So for my notebook, like how I keep it on the right-hand side, I write all the notes like for class, what I'm teaching or what I was taught, maybe what drills we did to go along with that, anything like that. But on the left-hand side, I'm writing just how I'm feeling and what I'm getting caught with over and over, or what I'm trying to hit, but I'm not hitting, and, what problems I'm running into. So those are kind of like the right side is my notes and the left side is my diary.
That's such a good way to do it, though, because if you don't write it down, you're going to forget where did you keep getting caught. And if you can go back and look at that before you go to the next class and actually work on some of that, I mean, that's immediately, hopefully, going to help a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm such a turn the other cheek kind of girl, instantly I'm like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And then all of a sudden, here I am several weeks, couple months into not being able to roll because I'm constantly like, oh, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. But if I keep notes on, oh, actually, anytime I do this, it's really hurting my back. Then that helps me go back and go, oh, this has actually been a problem for longer than I was willing to admit.
Oh, that's a really good point. I hadn't even thought about that from an injury log.
Yep. I'm trying to do much better about that. And I'm trying to lead from the front, which is very, very hard for me because I am such a one thing I love about jiu-jitsu is how adaptable it is. When I dislocated my shoulder, I just rolled with one arm for 6 weeks.
Some of us don't have that luxury.
Maybe not the best plan. I don't know. So I'm always so impressed about how, you can adapt it, but maybe it's good to just rest and rehab. And so I'm working on it. And I'm working on being a better leader in that manner.
That's good to hear.
Thank you. Thank you. Katie mentioned that another thing is to really think about the things that you did right in class. Focus on just any little thing, which might just be I showed up or,
Right.
Kristen actually said, just take surviving as a victory. You
sometimes
survived the
that's
night.
it. Right.
That can be victory enough for you. So I liked that. What are some things to kind of turn your mood around? If you are being an angry troll, what do you do to kind of?
Sometimes I just need a good cry.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's so many things that build up that maybe that's what I really need. Even though as much as I hate it, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. And then some stupid commercial comes on TV or something, and then you just lose it. And that's what happens. But you feel, so it's cry or eat something if maybe you're hangry. Those things help a lot. Music helps a lot. I know that's an instant mood shift.
Yeah, music is huge for me. I always want to we've talked about it before, but I have a playlist for everything.
Yes.
So sometimes it's just the playlist that I need to,
Well, and I think the other thing too is don't feel I try to show up and have a positive attitude and, look at the bright side and glass half full kind of stuff. But I think sometimes it's okay just to sit in that a little while and just feel it.
Yeah.
Rather than feel oh, I've got to go put on a happy face now. And I suck at faking that. It's just never going to happen. It's pretty easy to tell when I'm not pleased about something. But don't feel, you don't want to wallow in it for days on end.
Right.
But I think to just take a few minutes and just sit with it in your body, sit in a quiet space, and just be with it for a little bit. And then start working your way out of it.
I'm the opposite. I will cover it up. I will pretend everything's fine forever. So I am trying to work on, like just going ahead and feeling whatever the feelings are. And, like, so some of my playlists are like, let's have this cry and let's get through it, and then let's start to move on, so to like build into like a happier place. And it's funny because my therapist like a week or two ago told me to shelf something for a little while, and she's like, that might be hard for you. And I was like, how long have you been my therapist? Like, that's what I want to do with everything. Like, that's right. Let's shelf it. That's great. Oh, another thing, like, to kind of help turn my mood around, I love a good bubble bath, obviously, some Epsom salts. And so like, that's a good way to, like maybe listen to music or your favorite podcast, hint, hint, or maybe like motivational speeches or something like that. So just kind of take some time for some self-care to kind of do what you have to do to kind of shake it off and step up.
Well, the other thing that helps me is just getting out in nature. So if it's nice out and I can go for a walk, great. I can even sit on the back porch sometimes and just be outside and be a bird nerd and watch them come up to the feeders. That's so relaxing.
Yeah, I love that.
They don't care that you had a bad day on the mat.
Yep. Yeah.
So just go out and hang out with the birds and the squirrels and all that.
Yeah, I love that.
What's the most important thing? So we've talked about, we've touched on the surface of some things. For you, what is the most important thing that you've got to do?
I think the most important is never quit after a bad session. I really wish I could remember her name, but she was a gymnast, and I listened to a podcast with her, and she was just talking about like, having a really bad practice and coming home and being like, I want to quit. I'm going to quit. And her mom would be like, that's fine. You can quit, but you can't quit on a bad day. Like, you can quit after a good practice, but you can't quit after a bad one. And I love that as like a thought process. Like, you can never quit after a bad day. If you have a good day and you still want to quit, then okay, like that's better. Like, if you can have a good day and be like, that was great, but I still don't want to do this anymore. Then that's a different story. But totally. Don't quit after a bad session. And I love that thought process.
Oh, that is such a good way to think about it. Because I know there have nights that I've come home and because for me, especially if I've been to Greenwood and I have a much longer drive home, It is horrible because, I get a good 30 minutes to just beat myself up.
Yeah, that downward spiral.
In addition to the beating I've taken on the mat.
Yep.
The other thing, too, is I think as a teammate, if you see somebody and you know that they've had a bad night, reach out to them. Like, just check in. You don't have to try to fix whatever it was that was going on for them, but just like, hey, I just wanted to check in, see how you're doing, because it looked like maybe you had kind of a rough night.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, we need each other. We are a community, and we really need that, check in, especially best to check in immediately. But if you notice they weren't in for a class they're normally there for, and you're like, come to think of it, I don't think they were having a very good class, Monday, and now here it's Tuesday and they're not here. Like, I definitely need to check in. And sometimes that's all they needed, was to know that, it's about so much more than just the class. It's about the community and that you are missed.
Yeah. It feels good to be missed.
It does. It does. It's nice to know that like people notice your absence. We would love to hear if any of you guys have suggestions for things that you do after a bad class, whether it's a way to just kind of get through the feelings or something to make yourself feel better or whatever that is. We'd love to hear your suggestions.
Yes. So you know what to do. You need to share the episode on Instagram and tag us and put your suggestions, direct message us, come into the Facebook group, Beauty and the Gee Gang, and share there what you do, because we would love to hear it.
Yeah. Where can they find us on Instagram?
They can find us at Beauty and the Gee Podcast, and I'm always there at Brassy Broad Jen.
And I'm AJ Klingerman, everywhere you go.
The other thing, I want to know who's listening that's on Clubhouse, because I think eventually we're going to do something over there. but it's all new and fancy, and there are people listening going, what the heck is Clubhouse, Jen? It's an app.
I'm on Clubhouse and I'm still going, what the heck is Clubhouse, Jen?
Yeah. I have a podcast confession. Mm-hmm. I had downloaded the TikTok app, but I'd never actually signed up and gone into it. But I found out on Twitter this week, because sometimes Twitter is a magical good place, there is a Bridgerton musical that is being made and people are TikToking it. So if you have not watched Bridgerton yet on Netflix, it's all about that, and people are just making stuff up, and it's incredible. That's my off-the-mat tip for the week.
Great. I love that.
Do you have an on-the-mat tip for us?
Well, I think our on-the-mat tip is just maybe, instantly my thing is go into class with a game plan so that, you can really judge success or not. Gosh, it's that's my main tip every time.
Okay, but don't you think there's a reason that keeps showing up?
Yes, I really do. I mean, it just having an idea of what does success look like to you? We talk about it from a competition standpoint too. Sometimes success isn't just winning. It's being able to pull off one of the moves or being able to get your nerves under control or whatever. If you don't have any kind of game plan for what you want, then what does success look like? Maybe I just want to get in 4 rounds because I, only tend to roll 1 or something, or I'm not rolling and I just want to make sure I roll around. It doesn't matter if I get beat up or not. It's just that I actually did a live roll, and that's success. So I think the game plan doesn't have to be the standard game plan that we normally talk about, but just what does success look like for me for this class, and how can I make that happen?
I love that. Brilliant.
Thanks.
Okay, and I think that does it for this episode.
Great.
And we will see you on the mat.